You're not going to believe this. It's happening. We may actually get property tax relief in Florida. The version on the table right now could be better for us than anything we thought was possible 6 months ago. I want you to understand why I'm fired up, because I don't usually open a video like this. Back in February, a bunch of property tax bills got proposed. A few passed through the House, none passed through the Senate, and it all died because of a few senators' legitimate concern. It's not dead anymore. On May 27th, the governor called a special session for the week of June 1st. A constitutional amendment called Save Our Homes from Excessive Property Taxes. And buried inside it is the one thing every failed version was missing. That's why I'm excited. Let me show you exactly what changed, where we are right now, and what it could actually mean for your wallet. And we're going to be on top of this every single day this week. I'm Tom McNamara. This is the Florida Real Estate Insider. Let's get into it. Let me show you what actually happened, because the why matters more than the what. Back in February, the House passed House Joint Resolution 203, a 10-year phase-out of non-school homestead property taxes. House Speaker Danny Perez championed it, and it cleared the chamber 80-30 on February 19th. Then it went to the Senate and died in the Appropriations Committee when the regular session ended. And here's the part that matters. It didn't die because the Senate hates tax cuts. It died because Senate leadership did the math on what happens to a county like Liberty or Calhoun or Lafayette, counties where the residential tax base is a real piece of how the local government keeps the lights on. Phased out homestead taxes, no plan to backfill it, and you don't get a budget shortfall. You get a county that struggles to function. So the Senate let it die. Every property tax bill that session, and there were a bunch of them, hit the same wall. No backfill, no plan for counties that can't absorb the loss on their own. So here's where it gets interesting. The governor's plan does something the House bills never did. It writes a state transition trust fund directly into the proposal. State money drawn from Florida's budget surplus to provide grants to local governments so they can keep core services running. The fiscally constrained counties, Baker, Calhoun, Dixie, Gadsden, Glades, all the way down the list, are exactly who that's designed to protect. The wealthy counties with strong commercial bases like Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, Broward, Orange, they can absorb the loss inside their own budgets. That single provision is why this bill has a real chance. The Senate's objection from February was structural. The governor handed them a structural fix. Now they can move on to actually giving us relief. And one more thing that makes this version bigger than February's HJR 203, which left school taxes completely alone. This new proposal does not. Hold on to that thought, because it's pillar number one. Let's review the 5 pillars of the proposal. No spin, just the facts. Pillar 1, the homestead exemption jumps from $50,000 to $250,000, and it applies to all ad valorem levies, county, city, special districts, and school district taxes. Let me say that again, because this is the big one. The expanded exemption applies to your school taxes. Under the current system, your homestead exemption doesn't fully reach the school levy. The second tier between $50,000 and $75,000 of appraised value doesn't apply to schools at all. Under this proposal, the full $250,000 exemption hits everything, schools included. That's a major structural change, and it's the single biggest reason this version delivers more than the one that died in February. This is real and immediate relief for all Florida homesteads. Pillar number 2, any remaining property tax revenue from the non-homestead properties, commercial buildings, second homes, rentals, gets constitutionally restricted to core services, law enforcement, fire rescue, public education, infrastructure. So that answers the "what about the firemen in the parks" question that everybody keeps asking. The money that funds them gets locked in by the Constitution. It can't be siphoned off somewhere else. Pillar 3, the annual assessment cap on non-homestead properties drops from 10% to 5%. This one matters, and almost nobody talks about it. Look, Rents in Florida have already spiked. We all know that. And this bill doesn't undo what already happened. But here's what it does do going forward. It cuts in half how fast the assessed value on a rental property can climb each year, from 10% down to 5%. That puts a ceiling on one of the levers landlords lean on to justify pushing rents even higher. It won't roll your rent back. It will slow down the next round of increases. Pillar number 4, new residents. If you establish Florida residency after January 1st, 2027, you have to maintain residency for up to 5 years before you qualify for the increased homestead exemption. The governor's framing is that this stops people from moving to Florida purely to dodge property tax. Now, I'll be straight with you about the detail of the bill language that will settle. It's written around establishing residency, but exactly how that interacts with when you buy and homestead a property isn't fully spelled out yet. For someone who rents a few years before buying, that distinction could be worth thousands of dollars. I'm not going to guess at it on camera. When the full text is public, that's one of the first things we'll pin down and report back to you. Pillar 5 is the backfill trust fund that we already talked about. The state money that keeps the fiscally constrained counties solvent. That's the keystone. Without it, we're right back to February. And that's the bill. Now, the governor's office estimates the $250,000 exemption will eliminate property taxes entirely for about 60% of homesteaded homeowners, and that raising it to $500,000 down the road would make about 92% of them property tax free. The state's independent economists will land on their own figures, and they may come in somewhat lower. And honestly, who cares? Whether it's a strong majority or a slightly smaller majority, we all receive relief. And eventually, for a lot of homesteads, full elimination. Don't let a small discrepancy in the projections distract you from the goal. Coming up, the part of this bill that could sink the whole thing, the county budget math that should calm you down instead of scaring you, and the one question I want you to answer in the comments before this is over. Stick with me. Hey, this is where we could lose it all. The constitutional amendment establishes the trust fund. The constitutional amendment does not say how the money gets distributed. The formulas, the eligibility thresholds, the oversight, all of that gets written in implementing legislation in a session that doesn't happen until after the November 2026 vote. Let me emphasize that. You're being asked to vote yes on a constitutional amendment in November, based on a backfill whose actual rules won't be written until after you've already voted. The trust fund exists on paper. The check engine light is on. The mechanic doesn't show up until next year. For homeowners in fiscally healthy counties, this is fine. Your county absorbs the loss either way. But for the fiscally constrained counties like Putnam, Highlands, Hendry, Suwannee, and the rest, county solvency rides on a formula that hasn't been written. If the post-election sessions short that formula, that's where the pressure lands on local services. The bill protects you on the homestead side. It does not guarantee the services side. That's not a reason to vote against it. It's a reason to read the implementing legislation when it lands and to watch out who's drafting it. Now, let me calm something down because the scare numbers you're going to see this week are built to frighten you, and they don't hold up. When critics say a county is losing 20% of its revenue, that isn't true. Property tax is only one slice of a county's budget. Counties also run on sales tax distributions, sales tax revenue sharing, gas taxes, impact fees, federal dollars, utility revenue, and more. So I went and pulled the actual numbers county by county. Here's what I found. Statewide homestead property tax makes up around 7% of total county revenue. 7%, not 36, not 20. And that 7% is the absolute ceiling. That's the number you'd get if every single homestead tax dollar vanished overnight, which is not even what this bill does, because homes above the exemption still pay on the balance. The real first-year hit is much smaller than 7%. And it holds up even in the counties people worry about most. Calhoun, homestead tax is about 9% of total revenue. Baker, it's about 10%. Gadsden, just under 9%. The most homestead-dependent county in the entire state doesn't crack 14%. These are not catastrophic county-killing numbers the opponents are going to wave around this week. And for the rural counties where even a single-digit hit stings, that's exactly what the trust fund backfill is built to cover. Same statewide bill, very different math depending on where you live. Florida is not one market, and the county numbers prove it. I'll put the full breakdown county by county in the description so you can find yours. Now, let me tell you what this means for you, because the answer changes depending on where you're standing. If you're moving to Florida, pay attention to that 5-year residency rule. Establish residency after January 1st, 2027, and you're waiting up to 5 years for the full exemption. The difference between qualifying now versus waiting can run into real money. On a $400,000 home, that gap is potentially several $1,000s a year for years. Your timing matters more than it ever has. If you're already in your Florida home, you're in the best seat in the house. You're already homesteaded. You qualify on day one if this passes. Your question is what it does to your value. Housing economists are projecting meaningful appreciation as tax savings get capitalized straight into prices. Great if you own, which brings us to the other side of that trade. If you're a first-time buyer, this tax cut does not lower your cost of ownership the way you might think. It raises the price of the home. Your monthly tax bill drops. The seller's asking price climbs to swallow those savings. And your mortgage principal goes up with it. Run the math both ways before you assume this is a clean win for you. So, what's the biggest risk before the session ends? It's not the House. They've already approved something even more aggressive than this. The risk is the Senate and how the implementation language gets written this week. If Senate Appropriations narrows the trust fund eligibility or rural county senators don't get the formula commitments they need, this stalls again for the exact same reason it stalled in February. Watch Senate Appropriations starting June 1st. That's where this lives or dies. If it clears both chambers at 60%, it goes on your November ballot. There's polling out of Stetson University that the governor is citing. And I'll be straight with you, I haven't verified it, so hold on to it loosely. But that survey reports shows strong majority support for property tax relief. If numbers like that hold, getting it ratified in November is the easy part. Getting it through the Senate this week is the hard part. So how are you going to vote? Comment below, yes or no. I read every single one, and I want to know where this audience actually stands. Here's where we are. The provision that killed every property tax reform attempt this year, the missing backfill for counties that can't absorb the cut, finally has a fix written right into the bill. That's real. That's why I'm excited. But excited isn't done. The trust fund rules don't exist yet, and the whole thing has to survive the Senate committee this week before it ever reaches your ballot. The landscape is moving faster than it has in years. Your job is to see it coming before it gets here. If this kind of honest breakdown is what you've been looking for, hit subscribe. We're tracking this special session every single day this week. Vote counts, committee actions, all of it. So you're never the last one to know. This has been the Florida Real Estate Insider. I'm still Tom McNamara. I'll see you in the next one.